Hi friends, Laurelei Black here from Blade Broom, and this week we're going to talk about solitaries, mentorship, and coven work within witchcraft. And as per usual, I'm going to focus on traditional witchcraft, but I think this discussion really applies to all different types of witchcraft. It's just that really all of my personal experience comes from within the realm of traditional witchcraft, so that's what I feel most comfortable talking about with any kind of authority. But you can still apply it to your experience or sort of talk back with me about your experience within other types of craft. I like to keep what it is that I'm presenting sort of rooted in folklore and myth and history as well, because I think that we're going to find a lot of really good examples coming from those places about ways that we have seen witches practicing successfully, both within solitary spheres and, as we're going to talk about, I think even more so within sort of mentorship paradigms and coven work. But we're going to talk about how we see all of these things playing out through the lore. So let's dive in. I feel like ever since I first started exploring the craft and deciding how it was that I wanted to practice, there's been sort of a perennial debate about which one is preferable. And I see lots of young witches getting really strident advice from more experienced witches about being solitary is the best, screw covens. Covens are the worst. You shouldn't go there. You're going to find nothing but people that have, that are trying to shove their opinions down your throat, and it's all a pissing contest. I saw that very recently online. It's nothing but a pissing contest in a coven. Things like that, you're going to get, it's more of a cult kind of atmosphere. It's all driven by cult of personality and that kind of thing. Lots of really strong opinions about anti-coven work. Or you see people that have had the breadth of their experience being from within coven saying you're never going to get deep enough into the mysteries of the craft going it alone. You're always going to be a fluffy bunny if you don't get involved with a coven, if you don't seek out mentorship, if you just try to rely on what it is that you can find by yourself. You're never going to be enough of a witch if you do it alone. And I feel like both of those are really false messages. Like both of them are really just false messages. And so I wanted to kind of talk about why neither one of those is right. They're both wrong. And so if they're both wrong, what is right? What is the right message? Because there's, doesn't there have to be a right answer? And the answer is no, there doesn't have to be a right answer. Because really, it's about what's right for you. It's about the right fit. And the truth is, you're better off going it alone as opposed to being in the wrong coven. The wrong coven is terrible. It's the worst fit ever. It's the worst thing. That's run away. And being alone when your soul cries out for partnership, mentorship, and or a group to support you is also a heartbreaking experience. So there has to be a balance. Really, I think what's important here is knowing what's right for you, knowing what's right for you as a witch and as a person, as an individual. So you have to start from that foundation. You have to start by asking yourself some really deep questions about what it is that you're seeking as a student of the craft. So you have to start first by knowing what it is that you want out of the craft. Do you actually have goals within witchcraft? And I would posit to you that you probably do. There's probably something that you want from your study of the craft. Is it to learn more about the art, the hidden arts of the craft? I would think that most of us are on a path of study. but that may just be because I am a very sort of intellectually curious person. And if you're, consistently watching a vlog like this, you're probably an intellectually curious person too. And so you probably have a desire to study. So what is it that you're wanting to study? I would make a list of those things. And do you need a guide or a mentor to help you along that path? Or are you going to be able to find what you need from scholarship and study on your own? I would posit to you that there are probably a lot of books and blogs and articles online and groups that can support you in your study of that if you're dedicated to the concept of being a solitary. And at the same time, you might benefit greatly from a coven or a mentor situation if you can find one or a group that is aligned with your philosophies. Other things that you need to sort of define for yourself in terms of what you value is, what is it that you value in a study relationship? Are you looking for somebody who can just expose you to material? Or are you looking for somebody who can actually instruct you in that material? Because some concepts are harder to learn than others. So do you want somebody who can break those things down for you, or are you able to do that for yourself? Do you want somebody who can sort of do that hand over hand teaching, or do you like to work independently? These are important things for you to know about your study style. And you may or may not have a good idea about that. You may be sort of metacognitive about this process, meaning that you have a good understanding and overview of your understanding of how you learn already from your schooling experience. And then again, you may not. Some learners don't get that from their school. School was sort of a baffling experience for them in a lot of ways, and they just know that they hated it. So, but that doesn't mean that they don't enjoy learning. So this is a good time for you to think about how it is that you like best to learn. Do you want that direct instruction, or do you want peer support? So study groups are a different thing than a coven necessarily, and maybe that's what you're looking for really, is that peer support, and not necessarily the bonds of covenhood. Do you want somebody to motivate you and hold you accountable, which is really a different level than motivation? How do you feel about the community involvement, or that group aesthetic, that group feeling, that gestalt that happens from within the group? Are you looking for a family? Are you looking for group therapy? Are you looking for something more like a Stitch and Bitch, where you get together and you do craft projects and you kind of like talk about what's on your mind, and but you don't necessarily get too deeply involved beyond that. Another thing to evaluate is, how do you see the craft itself? Is it a religion for you? Is it a sorceress practice for you? Is it a philosophical framework? Different covens, different traditions have very different ideologies around these things. And it's not going to do you any good to get involved with a coven that may be accepting to new members, but doesn't see things the way you do. You're going to be a square peg in a round hole, and that's just not going to work out. A subset of considerations under how do you see the craft is, do you have a strong pull to a particular tradition of craft that you need to look for, including a particular craft belief or tradition, deity, or a particular spirit that you need to be keeping an eye out for, or be looking for a group that is of like mind in that sense. If you come in trying to change their minds about their beliefs and structures, or if you feel like they're trying to proselytize to you and change your philosophies, and deep foundational beliefs, it's just at odds with, your nature or their nature, and that's just not going to work. You need to move along and find a different group. So again, depending on what your actual goals within the craft are, and I feel like it's supremely important to know what it is that you want from the craft. A coven or an individual mentor can be very supportive in helping you find that, as long as you and that individual or that group are aligned in most things, if not every single thing. But the big pieces need to have a lot of overlap. So, and here's where the biggest piece of gnosis is that I have to share in this entire video. And that is that you are never going to get what it is that you want out of the craft unless you personally do it for yourself. And I know that that sounds really obvious. I get that it does. But there are a lot of people that come to a Facebook group, or they follow a blog, or they start watching a YouTube channel, or they get themselves hooked up with a mentor or a teacher that they really respect, and they ask for instruction, or they join a coven and they think, I have found it. These people are my soul family and I'm going to do the thing. I'm going to do it. And it's like starting college for them in a way, and they go and they get all their supplies and they have their witchcraft backpack all loaded up and they're ready to go. And you can see the excitement, you can see the fervor, and they do it for about 2 or 3 months, really hardcore. And then the shiny wears off the penny. In terms of doing the work for yourself, one of the stories that I am often reminded of is that of Caradwyn and Gwion Bach. So if you're not familiar with this story, I'm going to tell it to you, but only the short version, because I can get a little carried away. So Caradwyn is, as many of you know, the keeper of the cauldron, but a lot of us don't necessarily know why she's considered the keeper of the cauldron. So in the Welsh collection of stories called the Mabinogion, there is a story that details that Caradwyn had 2 children. She had a lovely, lovely daughter, and she had, actually, I'll even say that the daughter was all things lovely. She was talented, she was beautiful, she was smart, she was just a joy to be around. And then she had a son who was none of those things. He was dumb as a box of hair and just hideous to behold and, dull to be around. So she wanted to give him some kind of gift to be able to make his way in the world a little easier, because she loved her son and wanted to just make his life easier. So Caradwyn was a master herbalist, and she decided to brew a potion, and she hired a farm boy, or already had a farm boy on hand that she had working around the place. And so his name was Gwion Bach, and she brewed up this very complicated mix, and it was going to take quite a long time to get everything right. But in the end, after it had been simmering, or working its brew for a year and a day, it was going to be ready, and her son was going to be able to drink it, and he would be the recipient of all knowledge in the world, and that would make him the smartest man on earth, the smartest man alive at the time. And so, but she had other things to do. She couldn't sit there and tend that pot the whole time, and so, and she couldn't trust her son to do it. He was not that bright. So she set Gwion Bach to do it. He was pretty trustworthy, so she had him do it. So she said, I need you to stir this, but don't you dare drink any of it. Not a single drop. Not a single drop. So he did. Short version is that at the 1 year and 1 day mark, It was simmering. It was just at that magical, about to be done moment, and 3 little drops landed on his hand as they bubbled out of the cauldron, and it burned him. And he put his hand to his mouth and he sucked on his hand because it hurt. And just reflexively, he sucked the drops. Well, he got all the knowledge in the world. And the first pisser that he had was that Caradwyn was going to kill him because he now had all the knowledge in the world, and that was not available to give to her son. Madcap adventures ensued. And I won't go into all that necessarily. They went through all these transformations that eventually wound up to where she ended up consuming him. He transformed himself into a grain as the final transformation that they went through, and she transformed herself into a hen and pecked the entire pile of grain that he was hiding in. And then she ended up giving birth to him as the bard Taliesin. And so he became Taliesin, the greatest bard in the world. And still had all that mystical, magical, great knowledge. The moral of the story being, one of the many morals of the story being, and there's a lot to unpack in the story, and I have a hard time telling it, short version, no matter what. But the moral of the story being, the person who does the work is the person who gets the reward. You have to put in the work. And there's no short version to it usually. Like you're not gonna just get downloaded. You don't get to sit on the sidelines for a year and a day, kicking rocks and playing in the dirt and just sort of like twirling your hair while somebody else stirs the cauldron and sweats over it in freezing temperatures and the sweltering heat, swatting away the mosquitoes and, getting blisters and all that kind of stuff, only to get burned in the end, and then to get chased by a crazy lady. Sorry, Caradwyn. Just to get chased by a hacked off mom who had plans for her son. Guess that's not so crazy after all, right? But you got to do the work. You have to be the one to do the work to get the reward. And if you're not willing to put in the blood, sweat, and tears for the required amount of time, then you're not going to get the payoff. And that's just how it works. You got to chop the wood and carry the water. So you can chop the wood and carry the water as a solitary. There are lots of great ways to do that. But you're going to still chop wood and carry water. You're still going to stir the cauldron. And possibly get chased. You're going to get chased by the great spirits of the craft. You're going to get harried and hounded. Actually, those are great words. If you read the story and the transformations that he goes through, those are really great stories. Those are really great words. You will get hounded. You will be transformed by your studies. But you're going to have to do the work, and you're going to have to do the work in all 3 realms. There's not just intellectual study that goes into this. That's just the first realm. That's just air. That's just intellect. That's just the upper world. You're also going to have to do the work in this world, in the physical realm. There's crafting that has to be done. There's boots on the ground work that you got to do. And then there's all the spiritual third realm stuff that you have to do. You're going to have to allow yourself to be transformed. You are not going to be the same person at the end of this journey that you are when you start it. And if you're further along in your craft studies right now, as you watch this, you know what I mean. Taliesin is not the same as Gwion Bach. He isn't. He went through 5 stages of transformation, and that's an important number in Celtic tradition that shows how important those transformations are. You may go through more than 5. It may be 3. It may be 7. I don't know how many gates you're going to have to pass through. Only the spirits know that. Only your gods know that. Only your soul knows that. But you're going to have to go through it, whether you go through it with a mentor or with a coven or by yourself. Once again, I hope that today's video has been informative and enlightening and helpful. And if you're in a place of decision making, I know that I didn't give you a really direct yes or no, because that's not what I am and that's not how I do. Libra sun, Gemini moon. I'm always of 2 minds about everything. And here comes the part where I pimp my book. So a few years ago, I wrote a novel featuring a coven. So if you're interested in getting a really juicy, and I mean like smutty, don't read this if you're not into a little bit of smut. But it's a look at coven life. I wrote it under the name Delilah Temple, which is my witchy fiction nom de plume. Do all the things, and I will see you guys next Monday at noon. Bye, guys.